Hey guys, Moneyman300 back for some more Project Cars videos, and today we're going to be going over trying to explain all the controller settings, what they do, how you can configure them, and how you can help get the controller set up. So now that we have the 1.3 patch on the Xbox One, and by the way, this is not just applicable to the Xbox One. These settings mean the same thing across all the platforms. So this is certainly applicable to the PS4 and the PC. The settings I have and the settings I am using are on the Xbox One though, so keep that in mind as we go through this. So let's hop right into it and let's take a look. Now that it's fixed, I really like that you can come in here and these settings make a difference, right? You can really customize these, and you'll see that as I talk through each one of these and explain why I have things set the way that I have them. So first things first, we don't start at the top, we start at the bottom, which is a little bit annoying. I'm going to talk about some of the things I'd really like to see that are different in here. And this is this controller input mode. There are 3 input modes. Now, at first glance, if you were to flip through these, and I'm not going to flip through them because if I do, it's going to change all my settings, and I don't have these written down, and there's no way to save and load settings. I'd really like, a feature that I could set up a controller setup and then save that setup. For the most part, when you get this set up, you get a good middle ground. It works for all cars, and then you can use the steering ratio, and I'll show you that in a car to change, to do some more fine tuning. But there are times, especially with things like karts and Formula One cars, when you may need a completely different controller setup, and it would be really nice if we had the ability to just do different controller setups. But you don't. Be careful when you go in here. If you change this off and come back, like if I was to go to 2 to 3, it would reset them all to the default 3 settings. Now, I can't tell you, I don't know exactly the difference between each one of these, and they all have different settings up here. But even if you were to take 1 and 2 and make all the settings above and below the same, they still feel completely different. So it's really, to me, and I tested all 3 of these on the default setting. So I went controller input 1, went and drove 2 or 3 different cars, then I went to 2, then I went to 3. I could tell you this, 1 is significantly more twitchy than 2, and 2 and 3 aren't terribly different, but 2 is more twitchy than 3. So they get smoother as you go up. For me, controller input 3 works the best. Really smooths it out. What I was going for are, Forza 5 like controls because I like the way that game feels on a control. To me, controller input 3 gave me the closest to that setting. 1 was crazy, and 1 allows you have to run like a really high dead zone with 1, like in the 40s. It's just so twitchy, and maybe that's good for, however, if you just like to slap the stick sideways, it might be okay. If you like a little bit more smoother inputs, and I think 3 is better. If you're somewhere in the middle, then 2 might work for you. The settings mean the same things. It's just, it seems to me like it's a sensitivity. Think of it as and there are sensitivities in here, but they mean different things, and I'll explain those as I get them. But I'm trying to think, in like a first-person shooter, you'll have a sensitivity from 1 to 10. Think of 1, 2, and 3 a little bit like those sensitivities, but in reverse. 1 being the most sensitive, then 2, then 3 being the least or the smoothest. I think that's the best way that I can relate that. So set that first, because then now you can come up here and start to make some fine settings. So we'll go through each one of these. Steering dead zone, this one's pretty self-explanatory. If you've played a racing game, you'll understand it. If not, it's basically how far you can move the stick before it starts to steer. These are in there because sometimes people might have a stick that's a little looser, a little less. You might rest your thumb on the stick, causing it to move, and you may want to give yourself a little bit of dead zone. I like a really low dead zone. I always like that in Forza. It works better than Forza. Like Forza, you pretty much had to just take all the dead zone out or come down to a really low number, or it was super sluggish. This feels a little better. I tried this. What I did is I tried to do extremes on each one of these. I tried this at 100, and you had to steer a long ways before it ever did anything. I landed on 5. I really like that. Felt good to me. Steering sensitivity. So what this is, this applies a speed filter to your input. Really, and not just speed, an acceleration to it. So the more you push it, the more it accelerates from center out. And so it's not just the overall sensitivity. It's more of it's even an acceleration aspect to it. So if you've ever played around with mouse settings on a Windows operating system on your computer, and there's that enable acceleration button, that's kind of what this does, and this controls the amount of acceleration that are there. It ultimately manifests itself in a real sensitivity setting. I don't remember what the default in this. It was pretty high, and go drive these on default before you change them. For me, and I started on the GT3 cars, I used the rough GT3. It was twitchy as heck, and you saw that maybe in my video yesterday, that the settings were still super twitchy until I came in here, but I really was able to dial it in with these settings. So steering sensitivity, if this is still a little sluggish, you could bump this up a little bit. I would do it in increments of 5 or 10 until you get to where you want. But I'm going to show you some other settings that kind of go hand in hand with this as we go through. Throttle dead zone, same thing as steering dead zone. You could maybe even go to 0 on this. I would just as soon as I hit the throttle that things start to happen, and I did that with the brake. Throttle sensitivity, I did not play around with this yet, but one thing that you could do if you are, or maybe I did, I might have dropped this down just a touch, but if you are having issues on corner exit and you have a heavy throttle finger, bumping this down will help you to control that. So it's that sensitivity, how quickly, what's that acceleration that it does. And if you like to get on it a little bit more, you can bump this down and really help you out coming out of turns when you're getting on the throttle. Brake dead zone, I took that down to 0. I've done everything I can in this game I don't use the whole brake on the controller, or the whole range of motion on the trigger on the controller. I only like to go about halfway, and I'm just used to doing that. I ran 200% brake pressure in Forza so that it would give me that feeling. So this is up to you. I want to start braking as soon as I hit the trigger, and I bumped my brake sensitivity way up. I think the default was in 20 or something like that. So this is totally up to you. If you like to use the full range of motion, it's going to change whether you're using ABS as well. So I like my brake sensitivity really high and like to be able to control it with my finger, and don't want to have to go much more than halfway if I can help it. Clutch dead zone, these are pretty irrelevant on the controller unless you're using, a trigger or one of the sticks as your clutch that has, more context sensitive, has a range of motion. Otherwise, it's an on-off thing. So I didn't mess with these at all. I don't think I did anyway. It wouldn't have mattered if I did, because using the auto clutch option anyway. All right, so that's kind of the general settings on each one of these. Now let's talk a little bit more about what these settings mean. So speed sensitivity. What this means is that at higher speeds, it controls how far your wheel will go to lock. So, and I could show you guys, and what I'll do is I'm going to pop over and give you a demonstration of this one, because this one I can show in the cockpit view pretty easily. But basically what it means is when you're going, the faster you're going, the less degrees of rotation you'll have on the steering wheel. What that does is makes it so it's not so twitchy down the straightaway, right? So the controller, if you set this at 0 and you're going fast down a straightaway and you just turn just a little bit, the car just can get really unstable. So with this higher, it really smooths out your movements at speed and does not allow the wheel to go to full lock at speed either. Now when you slow back down, then you can get to full lock. I'll demonstrate this at what I have here and show you what I mean by that. And I think it'll make more sense if I wasn't able to explain it very clearly there. Controller filtering sensitivity. So this is another one. This one smooths out your inputs. So there's really 3 settings that have to do with smoothing. The sensitivity up above. Now this applies not only to your throttle, although it seems to have this applies to everything on the controller. Let me put it that way. It has the most impact on steering. So in your this goes hand in hand with your steering sensitivity, but it smooths your inputs so that when you're making twitch movements, it kind of smooths that out a little bit. The higher the number, the more filtering it applies and the more smoothing it gets, to the point where if you put this on 100, it feels really sluggish. You got to find your sweet spot in here. And I try to find a sweet spot that will work for most cars, and then we can make, and I'll show you that one in the demo as well. We can make other adjustments per car that'll help. I started at 85, and that was a recommendation, I think, that came from Slightly Mad. That was a little too sluggish for me. It was okay in cars that are a little more twitchy, in like GT cars. But then when I dropped down in a touring car, I could barely turn it. So, not barely, but it just felt real sluggish. I dropped that down to 65, along with a couple other adjustments that I had made in my steering sensitivity, and it really helped. Another thing is, I started with my steering sensitivity at 0. And again, because I was doing this on some GT cars, but when I dropped it, I tried some other cars, it was too sluggish. So between that setting and this setting, dropping this one down and bumping my steering sensitivity up, that really helped. So that's these two. Hopefully you guys understand that, and I'll demo the speed sensitivity. Force feedback, I dropped that down just a little bit. That's a personal preference. It feels like the controller is constantly vibrating and doing stuff, and it's really strong. So I just dropped that to 80, just like that. RPM gear display, that's just a display thing. Let's talk a little bit about these advanced options here, because I think they're important. So flip your advanced to on, and there's 3 settings. I'll talk about what each 3 of these do. Soft steering dampening. This is yet another filtering pass that it will put across the controller to be smooth. You know what would be really nice if a Slightly Mad put out something that explained what all these settings are. I literally was, have been Googling this stuff for hours between last night and this morning, just trying to get a feel for what these do. I try them and I can feel differences when I drive it, but trying to put it in terms to explain it very difficult, because they haven't came out and explained it. Different people have interpreted it and they've done it, but there's no one place that you can go that just says, okay, here's all the settings. So I'm at least trying to get information out there. But anyway, soft steering dampening, that is, what you expect. Dampening at any point in time, that by nature it can mean softening or smoothing. So it softens or smooths, puts another filter across your inputs. I really like it on. It feels twitchy when it's off. I would suggest leaving this one on with the controller. Next one, visual wheel filtering. This is a visual thing only, and what it does is in cockpit view, makes the wheel turning look smoother. It looks a little twitchy when you turn it off. I mean, that's totally up to you. And if you don't drive in cockpit view, it really doesn't matter. This is a visual thing only. And then opposite wheel lock. It took some time to kind of figure out what this one does. I originally had this off. So what I'll do, there's 3 types of controller inputs. There is your steering one direction or another, your centering, which means you're coming back to center, or you're crossing over, which means you're going from left to right or right to left. This opposite lock helps has a speeding effect in a crossover situation. So if you turn this on, what I found in the game is it allows you, so you get in these situations, and I found it in this game a lot, that you get into an oversteer situation coming out of a turn, and it didn't even feel like you're maybe going that fast, and you can't correct out of it, especially it happens all the time with the controller. I don't have that problem with the wheel much. And the car starts into oversteer, and I can't correct it. I literally, I let off, I try to center, try to cross over. I can't get it, to correct. Well, until I turned this on, this allowed me to be able to, if I got into that, I could cross over. It actually applies a speed filter on your crossover move on your stick that allows you to be able to correct those things. You can do that with the wheel because of the finite movements that are recorded with the wheel. The controller just didn't. It was very difficult to make that happen. So I turned that on, and voila, I'd get into one, and I was able to correct. Now, the other side of that coin is that it can put you in a situation where you can get that overcorrect snap. If you guys remember in Forza 5, for those of you that played that, and you had sim steering on, that sim steer overcorrect was real, right? And a lot of people didn't run it, including myself, because of that. You can have that effect with this on, but it does not seem as drastic, and I really liked it. It gave me some control over it. I did a couple of times have that quick overcorrect snap steer that shot me off the track the other way. So something I recommend you play with. If you're not having an issue, you know, with correcting your oversteer, then I would leave it off. If you are experiencing that issue, and I was with some cars, and some cars I'm not, then I have it on right now. That's something I'm still going to play with. So now with the patch out, I was able to go in and really dial the controller in to match me. These settings work really well for me. For most cars, you're going to find different, like I said, in things like karts and formula cars and different things. But I tried it on about 4 different sets of cars, and these were a nice middle ground setting for me. So it really worked well. So let me back out of here. Oh, it's quick out. You know, you guys know sometimes when you hit that, it's like literally feels like minutes before you get out of there. So I want to go show the that speed sensitivity setting in here, and let's just go out here. We're going to enter the practice here, and I want to change Laguna Seca because I need something that has at least some sort of let me do this. Yeah, Le Mans is fine. We'll do Bugatti. Is there a decent straightaway on Bugatti? Yeah, it's okay. It's at least something I know. Okay, so back out of there. Let's start this up real quick. So I want to just show you the effect that speed filtering has, and that way it gives you something that you can play with in a couple of different ways. I haven't driven this track yet, I don't believe, in this game. Obviously, very familiar with it from Forza. I'm really excited now that I got things dialed in. Now, I'm probably going to use the wheel more than I use a controller, but I am excited that, you know, people with the controller can get out there and be able to play. But I don't think the defaults work very well, to be honest with you. I think a lot of people thought they work well, or at least said they work well for them, but I think people can dial them in way better. So first thing I want to show, I'm going to go into the tuning setup. We're going to go right trigger 1, 2, and you get the steering ratio here. For me, in here, in a GT car that's a little bit more twitchy, I go all the way to slow with the controller. I tend to go the other way with the wheel. I go all the way to slow in this car. Now, there are other cars that I needed to, like I was in a Mercedes touring car, and I needed to speed it up a little bit. But that's why you want to find a good medium ground with your controller, so that then you can, per car, say, okay, you know, I'm pretty dialed in with the controller in general, but I need to make some adjustments per car because they just handle differently. The steering ratio will really help you with that. This smooths it out more. Slow makes your inputs a little bit slower. Fast makes them a little faster. Pretty self-explanatory. Let's get out here real quick. And I need to get in the car here. Otherwise, this doesn't really show that much. So let's get out here. But yeah, what you'll notice is I can't get to full lock when I get out here on the track. So right now, let me just show you guys real quick, just so we have a starting point. Right now, okay, you can see there's my full lock, right, left. All right. So now let's get up to speed here. We'll have to get around just a... Whoa. The controller vibrates. I don't know, this controller still vibrates a lot in some situations, which I don't know that it should. Okay, right in here, I'll be able to show it. So now I go lock. Oh, that's not what I really wanted to do. Hang on. We gotta redrive here. It was hard to see there, but it did not go as far. I definitely should have picked a track that had a little better straightaway. Maybe get around to the front stretch here. What I'll do is I'm going to get outside the car here too, just to give you guys an idea of, you know, whether, you know, these kind of talk about the controls as I go. We'll get around to that front straightaway to show this a little better. Is it in my house or is that in the game? It's been in my house. Let my tires warm up a little. We'll get to this front stretch here. Still just a little twitchy on this. Seems to smooth out when the tires get warm too. You'd think you'd just grip a little more, but... Uh-oh. That was all me. We might not make it. We might not make it to the front straight at this rate. Oh, the way this car sounds. It's kind of been my go-to car for testing just because it was the first one that I used. A little twitchy there. I don't drive behind the car very well, so let's get back in the car. I probably could have showed it on. I think this is the one I tried to show it on last time. And yeah, I know I got the line on. I keep forgetting to turn it back off after I do karts. This car got some serious understeer when I get on the throttle. Let's get around this last turn here. Let's get into our straightaway. See if we can show you what I mean now. So now when I go full, there's full lock right there. See how that's less? I don't know how much you can notice that. We'll let the crash finish there, but it went to about here. So instead of, it went to right about there's about full lock when I have it on 65. The higher you bump that number, the less you'll get on full lock, and it just allows you to still be able to make some movements, but doesn't get all crazy twitchy in there. So I know that wasn't the best demo ever, but it's a little hard to demo, but you can definitely feel it, and I suggest you guys play around with that. So try the settings that I have in there. Play around with them, cater them to yourself, change the steering ratio per car, and I think you can really dial the controller in and have it ready to go and start getting out there and doing some racing instead of playing with settings all the time. So anyways, I'm going to end it with that. Thanks for watching, and we'll catch you guys in the next one. Later.